CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Today, we are going to learn more about Tractian and their focus on North America. Tractian is artificial intelligence quarterbacking your maintenance, and they're offering a solution for every stage of your maintenance operations. TracOS is their CMMS platform, and machine monitoring is a focus area. All of it is to drive reliability in manufacturing environments. And we're going to get into all of that with our guest, Josh Power, the Director of Sales at Tractian. Josh, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Hey, Greg. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've been working on this for a little while, and at the same time, while we were trying to put this meeting together, you yourself were taking on this bigger, larger role at Tractian, and I kind of want to get into all that, but you yourself have been in the software space for a number of years, so I was hoping you could just share some of your background. You go back as far as you want to and kind of bring us up to today and your role there at Tractian.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, man, I'll just start and give you the whole scoop, Greg. So I was born and raised in the Florida Panhandle. Are you familiar with Destin, Fort Walton Beach, Pensacola?
Only a little bit.
Yeah, so Pensacola, it's the cradle of naval aviation. It's where we train all our Navy pilots, right there in the Gulf of Mexico. It's right where Alabama meets Florida, the Floribama line, they call it. A little bit east of there, you've got Destin and Fort Walton Beach, some of the prettiest beaches in the world. It's a little different from the rest of Florida. We call it the Redneck Riviera. Other folks may call it L.A., Lower Alabama. But it's country. So you got down on the beach, which is really nice in Destin, and north of that's where I grew up, which is farm country, north of Okaloosa County, Florida, about 7 miles south of the Alabama border, close to the Blackwater River State Forest. So that's where I grew up. It's very much a farming town. My father was a Marine Corps veteran, disabled veteran from the Vietnam War. My mother was a secretary. I was a football player all through high school. I was an all-state player, captain of my football team. We won a lot of games, went to state championships, all this kind of stuff. Most of the guys that I grew up with never really thought about going to college. There wasn't any taking the SAT and the ACT, nothing like that. It was, can your uncle get you on with the county? Can your dad get you onto his masonry crew? It was this kind of stuff. And I did a little masonry work right after high school. I did some landscaping work. A friend of mine owned a landscaping business, so I dug up stumps and I did all that kind of stuff. And then I got my first big break, first good job. I went offshore to work on offshore supply boats and oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. So I did that for about 4 years. A lot of hard work, but it got me on my feet. Bought my first car, got my own apartment, all that kind of stuff. And then one day I thought, I don't want to be a beast of burden all my life. I need to get some kind of knowledge in my head, some kind of education or training. So I'm not just a manual laborer. I'm 23 at the time, and I'm already getting sore and, and up all these 12-hour days. So I met a guy on the rig who was operated the satellite systems on the rig. And this was probably 2002 or so. And the technology wasn't too sophisticated, but it was, there was technology on the rigs. And he told me how much he made. And I remember he told me that he made like $120,000 a year, which in 2002 was just a lot of money. It's still nice money, but it was a lot of money in 2002. And so I said, well, how'd you learn that? He said, well, I went to ITT Tech and learned how to work on satellites. And so me and my buddy hatched a plan. We quit working offshore and moved to Jacksonville and started going to ITT Tech. And that lasted about 6 months till I realized that school was a total scam. And they were actually shut down. The government busted them. I don't know if you remember all that, but the government busted them years ago. And they got shut down all over the country for basically being a pyramid scheme. But hopefully they won't sue me for that, but it's all well documented. But it was a big scam. But anyway, after that, I went to a regular old college, and I was a bartender all through college. And it took me, if you remember that movie Tommy Boy, he said lots of people go to college for 7 years. Like, yeah, they're called doctors. It took me like 8 years to get a 4-year degree. I bartended all the way through, and finally got my degree when I was in my late 20s. And Thought I wanted to go to law school. Didn't. I signed up to go to law school. The summer before law school was going to start, I checked out all my books that I was going to have to read the first year. And I thought, well, I'm going to get ahead because I'm going to read all of them. I'm going to be the smartest guy on day one. I'm just going to smoke the competition. And I read them for about 15 minutes and didn't touch them the rest of the summer. I despise those books. So I thought, well, it's not a good idea for me to do something I hate. So I just put my resume out there, and all that was on there was a college degree and bartending experience. And I got a call back from Allstate to sell insurance at a call center. So just answering calls all day long in Charlotte. Thank you for calling Allstate. This is Josh. How may I help you? And then like just trying to sell them the full suite. And the whole thing there was try to close them on the call, get their credit card number right there, close the deal. And I was taking inbound calls, probably I guess about 50 to 100 a day. It was normal to hit 100 calls a day, and that was kind of the environment where if you wanted to get up and go to the bathroom, you had to push this little button and get permission, and you only had like 8 minutes a day to be in the bathroom. It was just very managed, type environment. And they hired me on there with I think it was like a $20,000 base salary, and I was pumped just to have that base salary and health insurance. And I had no clue I was going to make bonuses. They said you'd have a chance to make bonus. I thought it would be, $100 here and there or something. And I got in there and just really crushed it, did good, had an aptitude for sales, and just started making a lot of bonus money. And before you know it, I'm making like $70,000 a year. And I had no clue you could make this kind of money in sales. I mean, I always thought sales, I thought of door-to-door vacuum cleaner sales and like, Slick Willie kind of stuff. I didn't think it was like a real career. I was doing great, making money selling that. And then one day a guy called in I sold him car insurance on really nice, two or three really nice vehicles, a beautiful home, and like some boats. And like, he just had everything. And, he was in his late 20s, or maybe he was 27, 28. And, at one point after I'd closed up the policy, I said, "Sir, if you don't mind me asking, what do you do for work?" And he told me he was in sales. And I said, "Well, I'm in sales. How are you making all this money? What are you doing?" And he told me he was in outside sales, and that if I wanted to get into outside sales, I had to do some things differently. And I asked him how to do that, and he laid it out for me in about 5 minutes. And he laid out my whole journey for me, and I just listened, and then I absorbed it, and then I went and made it happen. And so what he told me was, "You're in B2C sales, business to consumer, inside sales. You need to be in B2B, outside sales." And I said, "Well, how do I get there?" He said, "Well, no experience is really hard. So he said, you want to be selling something like get to where you can sell software or something that's really worth a lot of money because then they'll pay you good commission." But he said, "You're not going to go from working at Allstate in the call center to that. So you got to find a bridge to get you there and get some experience." I said, "Well, what would that be?" And he said, "Well, the way I did it was selling copiers." So he said, "Try to get you a good copier sales job. You're going to bust your tail. You're going to grind a lot, but you'll learn a lot and it'll be that nice bridge." So I went out and found me a job. I got a job selling copiers for Canon. If you remember their Canon copiers, those were the best in the world at the time. And I was selling copiers and did really well there. And then I got a break to go to work at Career Builder selling software for the first time, selling their, remember when they used to be popular, careerbuilder.com?
Yep.
They were popular before, they were LinkedIn before LinkedIn. And I went to work for them selling to HR. And then I got a big break to go to work at Cisco. And I worked at Cisco Systems for a little over 4 years and covered mainly the Carolinas territory, enterprise level accounts. Well, in their world, enterprise level accounts, it's pretty much everything. You got 5,000 employees and above, 3 to 5,000 employees above. So, but yeah, I sold there and sold primarily to manufacturing there, and really enjoyed it. And that was mainly on the connectivity side of the sale. So IoT was just coming online, and we were connecting all the different machines on the floor in a safe and secure and reliable way. So a lot of routers, Wi-Fi points, and security solutions that Cisco had. And I really enjoyed that. Then I went and sold a data center software platform called Nutanix, which was a kind of a mid-stage startup. We did really well there for a while. Worked for a cybersecurity company, startup, cloud security company. Started my own business at one point. And then my last stop was with MuleSoft, who is owned by Salesforce. It's an API integration company.
Yep.
And I was still I wasn't in manufacturing at that point. It was construction and engineering design firms. So I was covering large accounts like Jacobs, Bechtel, these type of firms that would do design and implementation, design build work, and then large construction firms. And, it was all about just taking data out of different silos and connecting it all together so people could take advantage of these different readings and different data sources all through like one dashboard. So that's what we sold, an API solution that would connect all that without having to have a coder write it all, which can take forever, I realized that because at that time, MuleSoft used to be a really cool standalone company. It was a startup at one point. There's some cool guys that started it, got really popular, really hot, and then it got bought by Salesforce. And once it got rolled into Salesforce, it was like the evil empire stomped in and took it over, And I quickly realized that I wasn't really working for MuleSoft. I was working for Salesforce, and I just did not like it. I mean, if anybody out there working for Salesforce, I'm sorry, but I just did not like it. It wasn't for me. So that's when I ran into Tractian, and the guys came along, and recruiter reached out to me, and I didn't really know anything about the company, and I researched the company, and I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. I like the technology right off the bat. It's very obvious. It's not something that it takes a long time to get. And I thought, man, this solution is really obvious. And when you're a salesperson, you want to sell something that is immediately obvious to anybody. Like it's solving an obvious challenge in the market. And then there's a very easy to understand, easily quantifiable ROI there. Because I've worked in some places selling certain solutions where you have to do what we call educating the customer on the problem, which is essentially like you have to persuade them that there's this massive problem that you're going to, come in and fix. And like, maybe they weren't even really that aware of it, and they don't really think about it that much, but you have to get in there and like make them aware of it. And then you try to come in and solve it. It's just crap. It's not like that here, man. It's just so refreshing because it's like, oh, you've got machines that go down. What's your hourly cost? What's your cost per hour of downtime look like? Would you care if I could reduce your downtime by 25%? Like it's obvious. So it's and very much a mathematical problem. So that was really cool about the company, and the culture I loved, just the blue cap culture, and the founders are just very humble, very hardworking. They're just all about the mission.
Yeah.
And just the whole thing, man, compared to, because I'm Gen X, and just like, for me, I'm just going to be brutally honest with you, man. For me, corporate America just sucks now in a lot of ways, in ways that it didn't always suck. There's a lot of things that don't have anything to do with the business that got brought into places where it doesn't need to be. It just killed the culture, man, and like killed the productivity and took the focus off the business. And here at Tractian, we're all about making great products, building great things, amazing our customers, and just blowing out our number and building a great company, and like all that other stuff is just non-existent here. And it's just so refreshing. And we get a lot of new team members that come on board, and they kind of, they say the same thing, that, man, it's such a breath of fresh air being here.
I'm glad that you said that, like in all the lead up. So the whole time I'm sitting here paying attention, and I've got my own background as well when it comes to CMMS, maintenance management, building maintenance, all this kind of stuff, e-commerce. And as you're telling your story, I'm sitting here trying to link it all together, and I'm seeing the exposure areas where, because one of my questions was going to be, so how do you end up in this particular space? But now I don't have to ask it, because we can see when we look at the journey, and you're in one area. So first of all, one thing that's actually more common than people realize, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but when you're selling copiers into industry, you get a certain type of exposure to business people, big, small, and all throughout the middle. And that's really good exposure for how to work with people, how to have influence, and all those kinds of things. But then as you move through the journey, you're now directly selling into manufacturing environments. That's outstanding exposure, because you start to learn things that will actually track all the way back to when you were a youngster with regards to being around trades and all that. It all starts to get connected. And then fast forward to right now, and you're talking about corporate America, the difference in corporate America's culture versus what it once was, or maybe we finally figured out what it was, because I'm not a huge fan myself. But then again, I also think about how things can change, and organizations themselves can get influenced by who bought them. and so on,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
We've been through all those things, but what I like about what you said about the culture at Traction is, so I mentioned before we started recording that I know Igor, and I actually know several other team members there that I met a couple years ago, maybe a little bit less than a couple years, at a conference, and got to understand who they were. I knew about them ahead of time because I had that same couple years back. I had talked to one of their recruiters, just learning, because I'm just always curious who's out there in the CMMS world, because I used to be beholden to my own product. So I love what you talked about. They've got a hyper focus on the manufacturing environment at Traction. You guys are hyper focused on manufacturing, and there's an easiness that I think comes from the original culture of the original corporation before they show up in North America. And I think that is also part of why, I don't know if this is, I mean, they're just easygoing and focused on what they're delivering and trying to solve some very specific problems rather than generalizing. So, can we get into that a little bit? Like when it comes to the specificity of what problems you solve at Traction. So, kind of like a little bird's eye view into who you really work with out there in this big world of manufacturing and maintenance management, and what specific problem you're going after that you're trying to always find and solve.
Yeah. So you probably know a lot of this, and maybe even some of your listeners probably know. But I'm a big believer in simplicity. Simplicity is brilliance, and the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So I'm just going to say it the way that I would explain to it to my kids. Is that um, all these any company that builds anything has critical machines all throughout the facility, the manufacturing floor. Um, and if any of those machines go down, if they're critical enough, then when they go down, production stops of whatever the product is. And for every minute, every hour of downtime that machine is down, it's costing the company big money. And the types of machines that are critical in each environment can vary. And sometimes these are machines that um, are responsible for keeping the line going. So if you promised, that you would produce 100 cars that day, or whatever it is that you're making, now you only produce 85. Well, that hurts the bottom line. So sometimes it's that machine going down. The pain is related to the output of the product you promised. Or sometimes it's just if a machine goes down, there's a human safety hazard, right? So that's why it's critical, because if it goes down, Greg and Josh on the floor are in danger, right? Or maybe it's like in a food and beverage manufacturing production type facility. Maybe it's air conditioners in a refrigerated container that if they go down, now you've got however many thousands of dollars worth of crab that'll spoil. So it's just, there's all different types of reasons why a machine can be critical in a manufacturing environment, or really any type of environment. It doesn't have to necessarily be manufacturing, but that's typically where we see it. But just anywhere there's critical machines where there's some kind of significant pain if they go down unexpectedly, that's where we come in. And our end users are typically your maintenance managers, your maintenance supervisors, the folks who are tasked on a daily basis with keeping these machines running efficiently and effectively. Um, at heart, these types of people are builders, they're mechanics, they're the kind of people that like to work on cars and motorcycles and like to understand how things work. And they're very engineering type focused. We all know these kind of guys. You walk into the shop and you can smell the smells, and it's these types of guys. And um, our message and the way we communicate with them is very much about how can we make your daily life better and more productive. And so when you come to the plant every day, when you come to work, you're not just walking into a random series of events that you have no control over. And you're not just catching all the problems. You're on defense at that point. You're like, what am I putting out? And it's kind of like, you're playing tennis, but all the balls are coming to you, and you're just like constantly hitting them back, smacking them back, smacking them back. And we call that, being reactive versus proactive. What we want to do for those guys is every day when you come to work, you feel like you have control over what's happening at the plant. You understand the health of different machines. Yes, they may not all be new and up to date and running perfectly, but at least you know what's going on, right? You've got a mental graph in your head that, okay, these four machines over here, I know they're probably 80% good. These over here, not so good. These over here, they need attention immediately because they're about to fail, right? So it's just like getting a doctor's report card of your manufacturing floor and giving it to those maintenance guys every day. So when they come in, and not only are we letting them know like real time the health, overall health of the machines in their environment, we're telling them what is causing it to have a poor health score, right? So we call that root cause analysis. So we're able to tell them in real time what is causing the problems and then next steps to remedy. What do you actually need to do to go and fix that machine? And we're getting better all the time with how detailed those next steps to remedy are. Right now, they're general, they're definitely helpful, but they're getting better all the time as the AI and the technology gets better and better. The root cause analysis, accuracy, and specificity, and the next steps to remedy is already way better than anything we have, and it's only continuing to get better. But that's what we do for the actual end user that we work with. And then you've got, I call this the careabouts, Greg. So like different people at different points in the organization have different careabouts. Those guys at the front line who are actually using our product, we call them our product champions or our end users. They've got those careabouts. And then you've got the plant managers and the directors and the VPs. Their careabouts are around reducing unplanned downtime and any kind of associated costs with unplanned downtime. So if a machine goes down and there has to be a lot of different guys working overtime to fix it, that hurts in terms of labor costs. If we constantly have to carry spare parts on hand to compensate for the fact that a machine could go down at any time, all those spare parts that we're keeping on hand, maybe we've got $1 million worth of inventory, right? That's $1 million that could be sitting somewhere else. So that's a cost to hold all those parts. Of course, obviously, unplanned downtime, if you've got, you know, a machine that'll go down and maybe it's down unexpectedly for 3 or 4 hours, this can cost tens of thousands of dollars depending on the different environment that you're in. And those folks at their level, the careabouts is really on the dollars and proving that ROI. And they kind of put us in that bucket of overall process improvement and efficiency and just the never ending journey in manufacturing to drive cost out of the process. And we're a big partner there because if you walk into any facility, I mean, usually the two biggest, if it's not the two biggest, it's up there at the very top. The two biggest concerns are safety and reducing unplanned downtime.
Yeah, and the plenty of people out there would agree with that, or at least have that as part of their viewpoint when we're looking at things like, you know, maintenance and reliability. How does this impact the business, and how do we connect everything together? Because what we're really trying to do in all of these environments is keep moving forward. But from a safety perspective, safety is, for a lot of the people that I talk to, a lot of experts throughout the maintenance and reliability space. I mean, people that just really get it. They've been there. They've done all these plant turnarounds. They will tell you that a safe facility is oftentimes a reliable facility, and the other way around. A reliable facility is naturally going to be a much safer environment, if not the safest. Now, that might be a little lofty for me to say it that way, but I see where you're putting everything together. And I think this idea behind focusing on both the frontline workforce and their careabouts, and management at all various levels of management, we can get all the way to the C-suite, where the closer we get, now we're focused on profit, top line, bottom line. Everything in the middle is somebody else's job. It's not that they don't care about it, but it seems like that sometimes because that's what they're doing.
It's a different frame of reference for them.
Yes.
They just think differently.
That's why you've already talked about some of it when we talk about like corporate America and all these things that make everything keep moving. There's kind of their hyper focus in the C-suite is going to be those bottom line and top line dollars. Case closed. I mean, the balance sheet is everything, right? If the balance sheet ain't right, none of us are doing anything. We can all go home and find new jobs. I mean, that's the end of the road if you're not making profit, unless you've got a lot of runway. Um, Curious, when it comes to the system itself, and you've been on so many engagements probably already with your time there at Traction, do you find any common barriers to adoption when it comes to bringing in the technology? And if so, how are those being overcome?
Yeah, I think that in general, once we get a pilot in place, it usually goes very well. And there's usually an aha moment where we'll catch something critical before it happens. The customer sees it and they're like, oh, wow, okay. I know that has happened to us before. I know it hurts and it costs a lot of money. You guys just caught it. That's really cool. And the faster that happens, obviously, the better it is for us. But that happens a lot, and it's really fun to be a part of that when you see it. And the majority of our pilot programs, we start with usually with a pilot program. They'll let us monitor, 50 to 70 assets or something like that. And then we do a good job there, improve the ROI, and then we'll expand out from there. So usually in that first, 2 or 3 months, we'll catch some significant events, and there's that aha moment. The big hurdle for us to get over, and I tell our customers this before every project, is adoption by the end users. There has to be buy-in. We have to have a couple of really good champions who are actually going to put in the time and who actually are invested in improving things at the plant. And that's not always the case. I mean, we just kind of take it for granted that everybody cares about their job and everybody cares about the success of the plant and everybody's like bought into the company. And sometimes as a salesperson and as a company, you do your best to say, hey, look at this that we can do for you. We know that we can reduce downtime by this much. We know that we can have an ROI by this much. We know we could save your money, save your company this much money, and it's going to be a 800% return on investment. Why would you not do this? This just doesn't make sense. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, sometimes because the person you are talking to doesn't really care, so you got to have that. They've got to, whoever it is that is your champion, whoever's going to own the project, they've got to have this desire to actually improve things at their company, and they've got to want to be excellent at their job. And then you also have just the general mindset that even if maybe they want those things, maybe they really want to do a good job, but they're just burnt and jaded by salespeople and by different promises that other vendors have made in the past. And yeah, I've heard all this before about the vibration sensors or whatever. So they're a little bit skeptical and hesitant to believe. And at that point, it really is about just taking as much responsibility off their plate as you can. And by that, I mean, we jump in and do as much work as we can, make it as easy as possible for them, take the beatings, listen to them gripe and listen to them beat us up and just smile. Thank you, sir. I have another. And just keep doing a great job. Keep doing an excellent job. Keep doing what we say we're going to do. And then eventually that aha moment is going to come. And then those people that were detractors or not really bought in, all of a sudden they become some of your biggest champions. We see that a good bit, but then there's the group of folks that maybe they're just not very tech friendly in terms of the actual user interface.
Mm-hmm.
They'd rather have a tool in their hand, a toolbox, and just go out and do the job the way they've been doing it the past 20 or 30 years. And they're not in the operating rhythm of using QR codes and using an app on a phone, and just they probably don't even have Facebook or any type of social media, maybe not ever had any of it, just hate all that stuff,
But
and so
they're outstanding at their jobs.
But they're outstanding at their job, and they're like really high caliber engineers, and they can listen to a machine and tell what's wrong with it, so it's like, but it's just changing kind of the general process they go through. And again, those are some folks that we emphasize how easy the platform is to use. We intentionally made it feel easy to navigate. We're constantly trying to add more value into it and just make it more user friendly. So when they go in there, it doesn't just feel like they're going into an old DOS command line or just some confusing Excel spreadsheet. Like we try to make it very user friendly, and then kind of coach them up on how to use it, be alongside with them, and really work through that adoption phase um, to get to the same point where they get that aha moment. And if we can just make it a normal part of their operating rhythm, and get them to that point of the aha moment, then it's good, man. We're gravy.
Yeah, and I think when you say all that, I keep thinking about this concept, and we all beat it to death, but it's a true thing. Um, the why, the why has to
Hmm.
be there. Somebody's got to be bought in at some level, and there's plenty of people you can, hey, just tell me what to do, I'll do it, and let me get my stuff done. That's cool too, but
Yeah.
it's got to make sense, and it's got to make sense for everyone. And we a lot of times, at least on CMMS radio, we're talking about how we're all after the same kind of goal, but there's other goals within that for the individuals on the front line, for the individuals that are supervisors. Then we can really spin out and start talking about, like, well, what about the vendors that the company that's using your solution is also working with to drive that same value and get these processes taken care of? It all has to kind of work out. And then companies out there are making some critical choices in those areas because maybe right now they don't have a solution in place. They're going to move from one of those antiquated systems, or maybe they're going to move from having no system at all to becoming more advanced because they've realized, hey, we've got all this data, but we don't have all this data. And now we need it so that we can make sense of it. I mean, it starts to really, you can
Yeah.
see where I'm going with it. It can get overwhelming. And I also appreciate what you said about, or what we were both kind of saying about frontline workforce, which one of my really good friends, his name's Brian Bieski, he calls them doers. The doers, they just want to do, and they do really good work. If they don't, that's going to be pretty obvious. But the technology part, they don't love it because they've never needed it, right? So you're trying to kind of lead a horse to water, and you're like, I ain't thirsty right now. What are you going to
Right.
do about that?
Yep.
So I want to switch gears a little bit because your role as director, you have to assemble, manage, check in with, and kind of develop teams so that they
Hmm.
can move forward with some form of excellence and really kind of know what they're talking about. Do you do anything unique when it comes to developing that talent to know and understand manufacturing, maintenance and reliability, those types of things? Do you have anything that you do there? And within that, I'm also kind of asking, do you ever bring people in that might not have that full background in those spaces, but they've got the curiosity, the hunger, and the drive to still do great in this industry, maybe even working for you in
Yeah.
sales?
Yeah. So I think every leader is different, and every sales team is different, and nobody can be somebody else. You got to find what works for you, and you have to have your own sales culture, your own leadership style, and there may be one way that works for somebody, one way that works for somebody else. I do it the way I do it. If you came in, you may do it the way you do it. Maybe a little bit different for me, a different personality. But the way that I do it is based on what my background is. And I'm 44 years old. I've been in sales a good little while. I've been successful the whole time I've been there, and I am leading and building the team the way that the way I was raised. B, the values that were instilled in me as a young age, is because they're hardwired into me. With my dad being a Marine, my grandmother was a devout Catholic and a school teacher. Um, Athletics my whole life. That was like my big thing growing up was athletics. So there's a lot of that mixture. And then the blue collar on the oil rig and all the blue collar work that I had, the work ethic, that's my background. So I lead in that regard. So everything we do, the sales culture that we have at Traction now, um, that really I instituted with our team, it comes from me, but it also mirrors our founders and their attitude. And that's why I'm such a good fit with this company and why we're a good fit with each other is we share a lot of the same core values. And our culture of our sales team is hungry, humble, hardworking, intelligent, and accountable. And those are all characteristics that I've always found makes a good athlete, makes a good player, makes a good student, makes a good worker, makes a good employee. It doesn't matter where you are, if you're on an oil rig, if you're digging ditches, if you're in a C-suite, it doesn't matter. Humble, hungry, hardworking, intelligent, and then accountable to what you say you're going to do. So those are our cultural values here. So when we're interviewing somebody on the sales team or the account management team, whatever it is, we're looking for a culture fit first. First and foremost, I don't care where they've worked. I don't care if they were the number one, whatever. None of that stuff matters. If they don't make it from a culture standpoint, they're not going to be on the team. If we bring somebody on and then we later find out they're not a fit from the culture standpoint, they won't be on the team very long. So the culture standpoint has to be there. The next thing is, I don't really care if they've got experience in maintenance or reliability or anything like that. It's nice, but it's not mandatory. We want people who are sound in the blocking and tackling of sales, just the things that makes a good sales professional. Can they communicate clearly and concisely? Can they take big ideas and make them small? Do they communicate in fancy ways when it's not necessary, when simplicity would be better served to keep the message simple? Are they value focused? Do they understand that people have different care abouts? Do they understand how to get to the why? All these types of things are what I'm looking for. Um, and then we have a pretty rigorous process where we have them go through a mock sales call where they present Traction at like Igor and I are customers, and they will present the product to us. And before that, I'll spend an hour on the phone with them, coaching them up on how I want them to present it, how I present it, how I would go through a 10 slide deck on Traction, how I run a discovery call where you're uncovering challenges the customer is facing, and like the entire process. I'll coach them up on it. And a part of it is I want to see how coachable they are. Are they an I know it all person? Because I know it all people won't last very long. Can they take feedback? Do they want feedback? Because some people say, I want feedback, give me feedback, and I want to be coached. But then when you tell them negative feedback, they don't like you. Or just areas of improvement, they don't like you anymore. So you're gauging all that stuff. And then we get into the mock sales call. And that's like where you could be a great practice player, but then on Friday night when the lights are on, the truth comes out. Like maybe you're not a good player, but when the
Yeah,
lights
you
come on, some
crumble.
people are good and some aren't. So when you got a little bit of that pressure and you got to perform, we see how they do in the mock sales call. Some people crush it, some people fall to pieces. And then the last part of it is we have a little mock cold call where I have them call my cell and try to set a meeting with a plant manager or something like that. And so we get through all that, and I can identify a good player. And if they've got all that, we can teach them the other stuff, and we have engineers at the company, sales engineers who will run alongside our AEs. And if the AE gets in a jam, they'll be there to kind of help them out from a I guess it's more of a mechanical engineering standpoint. Um, but just the solid blocking and tackling of sales. It's, you're asking questions, you're uncovering the pain, um, you're finding opportunities to prove value to the customer. Like if there's no pain, there's no deal. There's no challenges there to overcome. So you have to understand what that is. Understand that there's a significant enough um, cost there to justify a project like ours, and then just following through on the sales cycle. With the blocking and tackling. If we can get there, then we've got all different types of internal onboarding and training and all different types of things here where we can coach people up and teach them um, the technology and the industry and the space, and they'll learn fast too, just on their own on these calls, one after the other. And you start to hear different things. And when I first got on the team, I would hear all these different types of machines that customers had in their environment.
Mhm.
And, at first it was like, oh gosh, how am I going to know all these different machines? But at the end of the day, almost all these machines, they may have a different name and a different function, what they're actually doing, but most of them are just powered by a motor. And then it's like, well, how many horsepower is the motor, and I don't know, how many bearings does it have? You know what I mean? It's like, um, not that complicated once you get into it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think people tend to. Well, you've already mentioned it when we overcomplicate things. It doesn't mean you don't need to understand the detail and what's the implication to the business. If this machine fails and why does it happen? Does it operate differently in the environment? I do also happen to already know that you guys have people on the team, not just on the sales side, but once somebody is actually on board and they're doing deployment and working with it, that they are CMRPs or people with extensive backgrounds in
Yep.
manufacturing and maintenance. Maybe not all of them, but then there's this other
They
thing
have
that
to have it.
yes, yes.
They have
And
to have it. Absolutely, no doubt.
big difference when it comes to because selling software in a lot of ways is about finding a problem, getting agreement on the problem, solving the problem. In and of itself, that's what matters. And then
Yep.
when we're deploying, setting up, implementing, moving data around, building out a PM schedule, whatever the case may be,
So now you're
leveraging
talking about customer success and account
yes,
management, and
yeah,
that's a whole different world. Like
oh
those
yeah,
people, they have to. Those are tough positions to hire for. First of all, because there's not a lot of those folks out there, and we require ours to really know the space that we're calling on, and they're reliability professionals, they're vibration technicians, Cat twos, vibration analysts, because they have to be seen as an authority. They have to be seen as somebody who really knows their stuff. Because we'll go on site and instantly be in front of people who have been, vibration certified for 15 years, 20 years, and you can't fake that. You can't wing it. Like you really have to know your stuff. So our team does. What I will say is, if you know any of those people that need work, send them my way because we're always hiring those kind of people. They're gold. But yeah, those people are a totally different world from the sales team
well,
in
and
terms
that's
of what we're looking for.
and the reason I brought it up is with each company, there's so many CMMS providers, and even for you guys, you're not a pure CMMS. You have CMMS, you have Track OS for
Mm-hmm.
CMMS functionality, but then you go that magnitude larger, which was actually probably in place first for the organization, and that's important for everybody out there. So my goal when people hear about it, they're getting to know you a little bit more about the company. But when we're out here in the world providing a technology solution that's supposed to drive value, the people that are actually onboarding you, not the ones selling you, although it helps if they have this knowledge as well. They have to really know. They have to have been there and done your job in some way, shape, or form where they can very quickly understand you. If the people at the client site have to educate you too much, now you're taking valuable time, which for them isn't going to work. Like you wouldn't want to
Yep.
go to a doctor and say, well, let me tell you how this works. It's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the other way around. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like that. Um,
And
I
we've
want to,
got, alongside all of our AEs, we've got sales engineers who
right?
are shoulder to shoulder, and they're there to get into those more technical details and be an expert in regards to technology.
Absolutely. And then it's going to be riddled throughout the customer success department and any kind of professional services so they know what's really going on and what the score is. I want to switch to kind of there's a lot of buzz around technology, especially lately, right? Everybody's on the AI train and IoT, IIoT, and all these things are great and good, but there's lots of misinformation and misuse of terms and all that. But I wanted to ask you just a little bit if you could talk about SmartTrac, because when I was
Mm-hmm.
at Reliable Plant, which happened in June, I was at the booth. Great booth, by the way. I mean, huge booth,
Yeah, it's
and
great.
I know some of those guys, so we were kind of chopping it up, doing some little sound bites that I'm going to drop. But track, the SmartTrac device seems to be like a pretty heavy focus area right now because it's driving value. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. So SmartTrack is our flagship product, and at its core, it's a reliability and availability enhancement solution. So we talked earlier about anytime a machine goes down, if it's critical for you, and that could be in dollars, it could be in safety, whatever it is. Um, wouldn't it be nice if you had a way to tell that a critical machine, was in trouble before it went down, so you could fix the machine and avoid the downtime? That's the overall net value of the traction solution. So we have a small sensor, but the sensor is kind of just the way we get. It's just a means of getting to the data. And what we do is, we glue the sensor to any type of rotating asset, critical machines in a manufacturing environment, and we are reading vibration and temperature data at a very fine level, gathering that in real time every 5 minutes From the sensor, we send it over to a small receiver that's plugged into a regular power outlet in the wall. From there, we shoot it up to AWS Cloud on a multi-carrier SIM card. It toggles automatically between Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, whichever signal's strongest. And then once in the cloud, we're running an AI program on it or a machine learning algorithm, whatever you want to call it. And what the process of what we're doing in the cloud with it landed us on Forbes's 2024 top 50 AI startup companies in the world. We were just put on that list this past spring because of what we're doing in the cloud and the value we're bringing there. But we're crunching that data, and then in real time, we're reporting back to the techs for all the machines in their environment that we're monitoring. It could be hundreds, could be thousands of machines in their environment that we're monitoring. We're giving them real-time alerts on those machines if there's some type of critical failure that's been identified that they need to go resolve. So if you're a tech, the day in the life of your job right now, you've always got a series of work orders that you're working on, and then your boss calls you and says, Greg, I need you to get out there to this blower. It just broke down again, right? And so you go out there and you see if you can save it. Maybe you can't save it. Now it's totally down, and it's going to be a couple of days before you can get it back up. And it's just constantly putting out fires. In the traction world, your day would be, you've still got your PMs, things you're working on, but boom, I got a little alert on my phone that says you need to go check this blower. There's a bearing issue here or a lubrication issue. 78% chance of downtime over the next 30 days if you don't resolve this. Here's some steps we recommend you take to resolve it, because here's what we think the problem is. Here's what you should do to resolve it. This all comes on your phone in terms of little alerts. You would click on the alert. It would go into the Tractian app where you'd get more information about it. It would show you a picture of the machine, exactly where it's at on the plant floor. You would go out there, you would inspect it. If the alert was correct, you'd give it a thumbs up. Alert's correct. If it was close, you would let it know and then put feedback, and then it just constantly keeps learning and the accuracy keeps improving. So anytime throughout the day, what the overall health of the different machines on your floor that are under your responsibility is. I mean, you can log into every single one of them by quadrant, by the floor, and just look, and you can see a health score. This one's an 88 green, you're good. This one's a 76. This one's a 62, right? So then maybe it's not alarming right then, you can still click on it and see what's driving that poor score. And so it really helps you kind of just stack rank your day in order of importance and what you should be doing. That's the overall value of it.
I saw the of course the video that Igor did, which was awesome. I really liked it because of the way it was done. He and I were talking about how that actually happened. I wanted to see if he would give me some outtakes, but probably not on the outtakes. And then at Reliable Plant, I got to see it and hold that device and understand a little bit more of that. Leo, he was telling me about it, so he'll be on one of those clips once that gets edited down and dropped. But what I want to do in the interest of time, I mean, because you've got a job to do, and I want to switch us into what I call the fun question segment on CMMS Radio. You got to go through a fun question segment for your first guest spot.
Yeah, man.
So we're going to jump right into that. First question: what is your favorite music?
It just started to be country. And for a long time, it was rock, classic rock, and even some alternative. But now, country today has become a little bit more like rock was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And rock today, I don't even recognize. So, I don't know if I'm getting older and I'm just 100% country, or if the music's changed, but I'm almost exclusively country today.
All right. Good stuff. Next fun question is, what is your, and there's a lot of answers you could probably give on this one, but what is your favorite sport or hobby? And on the sport, it doesn't necessarily have to be one that you play. It could be one that you like to watch or support.
Football, still football. It's declined in popularity a little bit, but I love college football.
All right.
And I like the NFL too, but primarily SEC football. Yeah.
All right. That's, and again, with all these questions, it's more just to kind of it's moments of levity, a little bit more about you. And it's kind of, some people might not care, but a lot of people kind of dig it. Here's the big one. No wrong answers here, but what is your philosophy, your perspective, opinion on work-life balance?
Um, I think it has to be work-life integration. You know, before everything went remote, or not remote, before everything went so connected, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Probably 15, 20 years ago, even if you had a white collar job, you left it at the office and you went home.
Right.
And now probably with the advent of smartphones, you're always connected. So I think the idea that you totally disconnect at 5 o'clock and you turn off your work phone and you're not accessible, I think that's going to limit your career, because as you grow in responsibility, your superiors are going to want to have you there, and you're going to want to be there if they need you, if there's fires to put out. So I think the idea that you can separate work from life totally now, you can do it, but you're going to limit your career. So I like to have work life integration, um, and I do try to, on the weekends, I really do try to disconnect. And I make sure that, my superiors have my number, and I've got a personal phone and then my work phone. And if I'm ever going to turn off my work phone and just take a break for a minute, I make sure that my superiors know how to reach me on my personal phone. So if there's a problem that reaches them, they can always get me. But maybe I don't want 50 people being able to get me right now, because maybe I just want to tune out a little bit. I do think that kind of stuff is important, whether it's just because you want to turn off your phone and go fishing, or you've got some kind of hobby that you want to do. I think that we tend to throw ourselves 100% into work sometimes, and I don't think that's healthy at all. I think you do have to turn it off every so often.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like it. And the reason I say there's no wrong answer, and I say this on every episode, but I'm not reading something. I just believe that it's going to resonate with somebody. It's interesting to get these perspectives. And we're not just here on CMMS Radio to learn about software. We're talking about maintenance management, and what that really boils down to, in my view, whether it's right or wrong, everybody can decide for themselves. It's people, it's process, and what is technology doing for us. And when we talk about something like work-life balance, there's a lot of different ways to kind of cut that up, look at that, think about that. And that's all we're really doing here, is kind of getting people thinking, because I'll tell you, one of my favorite topics to discuss, but at the same time, I hate that we even have to discuss it, is critical thinking is really high on the endangered species list. So I like
Totally.
to just get people thinking. And if somebody out there is going, no, I don't believe that, that's cool. That's fine. Not a big deal. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
So I always tell people, hey, if you don't like something we're talking about, hit me up. We might even bring you on. So, Josh, I want to thank you for this time. And I want to let people know, if you want to get in touch with Josh Power, you can find him on LinkedIn. And then, of course, for learning more about Tractian, you can definitely hit them up on their website. It's Tractian. And I'm going to have some stuff coming on future episodes about that, so that people can learn more about the company, how you work, the problems that you solve. But this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it's been great, Greg. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it.
Love to come back anytime.
We'll get you on again.
All righty.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.